Every year, hundreds of video games get released, with several of them being top contenders for our favorite games of that year. But as the years pass by, only the truly special games will remain in our minds as our favorite games of all time. And I'm no exception to this, as I've gained quite a few all-time favorites of my own growing up. So I figured, why not just share them all with you guys? And the rules for this list are the same for every other list. If there's multiple choices for a franchise, they all go in the same spot. So with that said, plug in your controller, turn on the console, wait for updates to download, and press any button to begin. These are my top 10 favorite video games of all time. Please insert a coin. Now, if you've been a fan of my channel for a while, you know that I grew up with PlayStation, so that means there probably won't be a lot of Nintendo games on this list. One Nintendo game I just simply can't leave out though is Punch-Out for the Wii. Everything from the cartoony art style to the fun and addicting learning curve, this game has it all. I liked it so much that I even bought it a second time when it was re-released on the Wii U eShop. There's a ton of fun characters with vibrant personalities, some challenging tasks to do on the side, and the gameplay is exactly how you'd remember it from the NES game. It's a Punch-Out game through and through. Sadly, I think that is the game's biggest downfall. Because it's a Punch-Out game, it retains that gameplay style of memorizing patterns and timing, so there's pretty much no replay value as it's the same every single time. And considering each playthrough can be done within a couple hours, it's an extremely small game with a lot of untapped potential. We can only hope Nintendo looks into it more in the near future. Punch-Out Wii steps into the ring at number 10. Before it tried way too hard to reinvent itself with horrible gameplay changes, and before Blizzard gave them the idea to abuse the loot box system, Call of Duty was actually an amazing franchise that was overhated for simply being popular. These games were very well polished, fun and addicting, and could get really competitive sometimes. And my favorite one out of them all is Call of Duty Black Ops. I don't really care too much for the campaigns when it comes to Call of Duty games, but this definitely had one of the more enjoyable ones. The multiplayer though had some of the most iconic maps in the series and some of my favorite in the series, and it fleshed out the Zombies mode introduced in World at War by quite a bit. If Activision ever decided to remaster this game without doing any of the terrible things they did with Modern Warfare Remastered, like locking it behind a new game or making the DLC more expensive than the original, then it would be a pre-order for me. Not just a day one buy, a pre-order. It was my introduction to the franchise and a dang good introduction at that one. Call of Duty Black Ops survives in the number 9 spot. Black Ops may be my favorite Call of Duty game, but it is in no way my favorite shooter. That honor belongs to Team Fortress 2. With over 1,300 hours of total playtime and no life, I don't think there's a single multiplayer game I've spent more time on than this. Now, as fun as the colorful cast of characters and variety of game modes is, I don't think I would have spent nearly as much time on this game if it weren't for the community. I actually can't recall the last time I've been in a regular server. I just have way too much fun in the custom ones. Modded features, modded maps, modded weapons. A lot of my favorite servers feature maps directly imported from other games. Super Mario 64, Banjo-Kazooie, GoldenEye, and even the entirety of Ocarina of Time. All of it. I hope you like Scout or are good with rocket and sticky jumping, because it's gonna take you a while to get anywhere there. With a decade under its belt and a player base still thriving to this very day, Team Fortress 2 captures the number 8 spot. Alright, now we're gonna go old school for a bit. You know Crash, you know Spyro, some of you even know Gex. But do any of you know a little green guy by the name of Croc? Originally started as a Yoshi game, but changed after Sony's and Nintendo's friendship went south, Croc became one of the first 3D platformers. It likely would have been the first if it weren't for that delay, but then it would be a Yoshi game, so it's an even trade. Even though the game may not have aged well, those of us like myself who are used to the controls can pop it in at any time and have as much fun with it now as we did back then. It runs smoothly, has one of my favorite OSTs in video games, and even though it doesn't hold up gameplay-wise, graphically it still looks amazing for the time. This game is super nostalgic to me. I can recognize every bit of music, recognize every sound effect, and it led to me discovering one of my favorite YouTubers, Kid Icarus. Although Croc isn't talked about much today, I'm glad there are others who remember him as fondly as I do. Croc kapows into number 7. There are tons of arcade games out there that evolve over time. Fighting games, racing games, shooting games. But then there are those that are so iconic for their specific gameplay styles that you don't think they could ever change without keeping their fun. Games like Galaga, Asteroids, Centipede, and Frogger. You'd be wrong about that last one though if you've played Frogger for the PlayStation 1 in 1997. It was the first video game I ever played and I don't regret it at all. This game didn't just take Frogger to the next level, it pretty much instantly took him to his maximum potential. With super tight and responsive controls, another bopping soundtrack, and beautifully colorful levels, I don't understand how this thing got so many negative reviews. The only negative I can think of is a few frame rate drops here and there, but that only happens in a few levels. Looking at the reviews, it seems to be because of the difficulty, but 4-year-old me could handle this thing. The IGN review even claims they were conspiring to make it one of the worst PS1 games ever made. Even back then, they were a bunch of babies. Yeesh. Frogger hops into the number 6 spot. Okay, we'll get back to more modern games in a second. I just want to give one more classic PlayStation 1 shoutout to Ape Escape. Gameplay aside, the personality of this franchise is enough to get it on this list alone. The charming polygonal anime style, the so bad it's good voice acting, and everything about the monkeys. I'm always so excited to pop this thing in for a replay. Speaking of playing it though, Ape Escape has one of the most unique control schemes I've ever seen in a video game. The left stick is used for moving, okay, seems simple enough. The right stick is used for attacking, and the shoulder button is used for jumping. It sounds odd, but it works really well, feels amazing to play, and you get used to it pretty fast. You get to explore giant worlds and catch several monkeys with their own personalities, which is super addicting, and listen to a repetitive but catchy soundtrack. There's so much detail in this game too, whether it be all the gadgets, the mini-games you unlock with the Spectre coins, or the description for each and every monkey. With the Crash and Spyro trilogies remastered, this should be the obvious next step, and I hope Sony goes through with it. Ape Escape catches the number 5 spot. There was a time in my life where I lost my gaming identity for a bit. Sony had ditched the colorful mascots that I loved so much, so I became a Nintendo fanboy in rebellion. But I wasn't that much of a fanboy considering how little properties I actually played aside from Super Smash Bros. I just couldn't stand the dark gritty art styles and constant attempts at realism that all the modern Sony games were coming out with at the time. So when I get a PS4 in anticipation for the Insane Trilogy and Tekken 7 which were just announced, what was one of the very first games I got? Grand Theft Auto 5. Yeah, I didn't plan for that to happen either, but it was on sale, what are you gonna do? But I don't regret that purchase. Not only did it have a shockingly gripping story compared to what I usually like, but every bit of the controls feel great. Running, swimming, flying, driving. The graphics still hold up, there's tons of fun cheat codes to mess around with, and don't even get me started on the online. There's an absurd amount of stuff to do, from death matches to stunt races, you can even make your own racetracks. It's over 5 years old by now, but is still getting tons of updates and still has tons of replay value to this very day. Grand Theft Auto 5 steals the number 4 spot. With EVO 2019 driving a large, rusty hatchet through the forehead of Super Smash Bros. Melee, there's no better time to celebrate its sequel, Super Smash Bros. Brawl. There's tons I have to say about this game. First, the adventure mode. The incredible subspace emissary, featuring fun cutscenes with colorful interactions between our favorite characters. Then there's the incredible variety of single-player modes. Classic Mode, All-Star, Boss Battles, and the Vault modes, including my favorite, the Stage Builder. And we can't forget Super Smash Bros.' first time being online. I know people say it's the worst thing ever, but I honestly never had a problem with Brawls Online. Smash 4 and Ultimate have been way worse for me so far. The game already looked incredibly fun from the perspective of an outsider like myself, but with additions like Solid Snake and Sonic, I had to get it. While future Smash games did add more characters, none can match the replayability of the single-player modes in Super Smash Bros. Brawl. Long story short, until Ultimate gets a stage builder, it's not coming anywhere near this list. Super Smash Bros. Brawl smashes the number 3 spot. Ho ho ho, I'm gonna do it. Number 2 is the entire Tekken franchise. Oh ho ho! No, but really, while I haven't enjoyed some as much as the others, I can't think of a single title in this franchise that I hate. I love them all so much, especially Tekken 3, 5, and 7. Whether it be Tekken 3's evolution from 1 and 2 and introducing some of my favorite characters in the series, Tekken 5's perfection of the gameplay style and the sheer amount of content it had in its game modes, or Tekken 7's polish, addictive gameplay, and incredible DLC featuring Negan from The Walking Dead, the Tekken series just never ceases to amaze me. You can call it cheating to give a spot on the list to an entire franchise if you want, but it's my favorite. What are you gonna do? I think it deserves its status as the number 1 most successful fighting game series of all time. However, despite it being my favorite franchise ever, there's still one game outside of it that sneaks past it to number 1 on the list. Just don't forget that the Tekken series wins the number 2 spot. In my time on YouTube, I've had several different accounts. Sometimes I'd try content I'm still trying to this very day. One of those pieces of content being this exact same list. Some of the placements are switched around or not even there at all, but one thing that always remained was my number 1 game, Crash Twinsanity. Yeah, growing up with Crash Bandicoot, you'd expect me to be some kind of classic elitist fanboy who only favors the original trilogy, but that's not the case. I pretty much adored anything with Crash's face on it growing up, and while some of it has worn off like the Wrath of Cortex, Crash Twinsanity has never overstayed its welcome on my shelf. It has my favorite OST in any video game, the characters are at their best here, and the controls are super tight and responsive, even though the game is broken. Very, very broken, but in the best and most charming way. But there was an excuse for that. There were tons of delays holding it back, and then they had to rush it when they finally did have the time, but that honestly just makes me appreciate it more. Just the fact that the amount of cut content probably exceeds the amount of content actually in the game, yet still manages to be my favorite game of all time just amazes me. Now don't get me wrong, in the future I would much rather see a brand new Crash game instead of another remake, but I'm also really just super curious to see what Twinsanity's full potential could have been. As it is though, Twinsanity is fun, it's hilarious, and it spins its way into my number 1 spot. These are my top 10 favorite video games of all time.
This is one heck of an ending.